thank you for everyone coming this morning on an off day since we had a holiday yesterday. I'll start with a roll call. Councilor Lombardi?
Here.
Councilor Tabor?
Here.
And I am Councilor Cook, and I am here. First item on our agenda is approval of committee minutes. And the meeting minutes that you'll find in your packet are committee meeting minutes starting with April the 11th. The reason that is I'm going to highlight that I included March 14th on this list. March 14th was sent around earlier, at an earlier date, was attached to a prior agenda. However, March 14th, we didn't have a quorum in person. So we probably need to have some discussion around that. I think the rules are such that you have to have a quorum in person for it technically to be considered a meeting. Because two of...
Quorum two?
What?
Isn't it our quorum two?
It is, and there were two of us on Zoom that
Oh.
morning.
Was I the only one?
You were the only one here, Councilor Lombardi. So the challenge around that is that we can keep those in draft form, is my understanding, or just keep them as notes from the committee meeting and make them available, which is, they are now, because they were attached to an agenda. But it's probably best that we not approve them as minutes, because we technically weren't.
Not an official meeting.
Not an official meeting. So really what we're looking at to approve today is April 11th, April 29th, and May 16th.
Okay.
Um,
And they were all submitted before, so.
Yes, and they were all attached to the agenda this time. Can I get a motion to
I'd
approve?
move to approve the minutes.
Can I get a
Yeah.
second?
Second, all three.
Are there any questions or discussions or changes to the minutes?
Not from me.
Not from me.
Okay. And not from me. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
If you'd like, Counselor Cook, what you could do is adopt the notes for March 14th and just call them notes instead of minutes.
Okay.
So that's sometimes what I've been doing, just to document that there was a coming together, even if it was not an official meeting, just because it's up to you. You can do it either way, but we can just change that word minutes to notes. And I should have caught that when.
Could we call it a work session?
No, I just call it notes
Yeah.
from an informal,
Meeting.
Well, I'll move to do that.
Okay.
Second?
Is there any discussion? Questions?
No?
Okay.
so I'll make the adjustment just to call them notes rather than minutes.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The next item on our agenda is the updates on the ethics ordinance and approval of final revisions. We had an update from the legal department on discussions that were had following this meeting that legal pursued. First with the New Hampshire Municipal Association, and then also double checking the ethics ordinance with our own internal human resources department. Would you mind updating us?
Sure. So there were two items, or a couple of legal-related items from the last meeting. So the first was there was a request to send the draft ordinance to the New Hampshire Municipal Association for review, and effectively the New Hampshire Municipal Association said, nope, we will not undertake that review. Because they sent us the actual section from there. There it is. Are there any limitations on the subject matter we may ask about under their FAQ? And it says, NHMA's legal services do not include such matters as comprehensive legal review of contracts or other documents, drafting individualized ordinance or charters, or complete review of specific applications before local boards. So they basically said, nope, we will not do this for you, and you also have in-house counsel, and you should, you know, rely on their advice. So basically, they deferred and said, you know, trust your counsel on that. The other piece is in response to some of the questions about how employees would be treated under this draft ordinance. I reached out to our outside labor counsel, Tom Clausen, and said, hey, some questions have come up. There's some language already in the draft ordinance relative to, it was in section 1.803, relative to discipline that referenced collective bargaining agreements and other contracts. I said, should we maybe put some additional language in here to also as part of the investigation process? And he suggested, yeah, why don't, you know, it wouldn't hurt, let's put it that way, to add some additional language to reflect the collective bargaining agreements. So what I have proposed is that we add some language, and I've got a draft, Counselor Cook, if you want me to circulate what I shared with you. Do you want me to share this?
803 is just a single,
Sentence, right.
Sentence, right.
Right, so we suggested some additional language at 1.806, which is that investigation section.
Okay.
And it would say, and I can pass around the hard copy in a minute, if the employee is a member of a bargaining unit covered by the terms of a collective bargaining agreement, the investigation will comply with those provisions of the applicable collective bargaining agreement. This may include, but is not limited to, the employee having union representation at any investigative interview that may lead to discipline. So I can pass this language around, but we suggested that maybe we include something more in the investigation phase to make it very clear we're not trying to trump the collective bargaining agreements, but find an integration and a process. There, let me hold this so it's right. Just.
make me get my own. Oh,
I'm gonna.
He's right here. He's right here over.
Morning exercise.
Oh, there we go. Thank you, Counselor Tabor. So that was, again,
806.
yep, 806, 1.806, and I added an E. Again, just to make it clearer that we will have to be mindful if it's an employee covered by a collective bargaining agreement to just get the two systems to work together. I don't think it's difficult. I think it just means some extra notice, and it's not just your legal counsel, it may be your union representative if you're in a collective bargaining agreement. So,
And I'm going to read this out one more time so that we make sure we have it accurately in the record. This would be 1.806E. It's a new section, subsection. It reads, if the employee is a member of a bargaining unit covered by the terms of a collective bargaining agreement, the investigation will comply with those provisions of the applicable collective bargaining agreement. This may include, but is not limited to, the employee having union representation at any investigative interview that may lead to discipline. Okay? I'm going to make sure that our member of the audience sees this as well.
Thank you.
Great.
Okay.
It's a good inclusion.
Are there any questions or concerns about adding that additional provision?
No.
Okay. As you will note in the ethics ordinance, we also cleaned up a few of the things that were marked in our last review
Right.
of ethics, changing a few words. There was a removal of a word, 1.806A, changing a word in 1.806B. So those were the some minor changes we suggested upon our last review. At this stage, since we do not have, we will not have a review by the New Hampshire Municipal Association, and legal has reviewed it again, and also checked with labor. I want to get the committee's thoughts on moving forward with the ethics ordinance.
I would be willing to put a motion forward to approve the final revised version. I'll put that motion forward, and if I get a second, I'll speak to it a little.
Second, yeah, sure.
We had a good discussion with members of the public, and that was the impetus to have it reviewed by the Municipal Association. I get tangled up on that. But I think a lot of the discussion was, you know, is there enough due process in the ordinance that everybody gets a fair chance to state their case in any ethics review? And so I went back and I counted all the due process steps. First, there's the sufficiency hearing, so there has to be enough substance to get over that bar. Second, the person who's been accused is able to make a full response to the investigating officer. In fact, that's required as the EIO gets the person accused their full side of the story. Then the Board of Ethics can take oral and written statements. And finally, if the Board of Ethics agrees that there's a violation, there's the possibility of appealing to the City Council. So there's numerous steps there to appeal, and I think that was the crux of our discussion last time. And so after reading that, I said, this is a pretty good ethics ordinance. And having watched what's played out in Rochester, where they didn't have a step-by-step process with places where the accused could appeal, I think this means that if you had a finding, you could safely say the person accused had numerous chances to state their version of the facts. So, you know, after reading it, I thought it's been the result of many minds, but I think it's come out pretty well.
I don't think I can add anything to that. I think it's pretty thorough. I think it's a well-formed ordinance, and I think it's appropriate to move it along.
My final comments on the ordinance, really, I'm happy with the work that's been done by this committee and all the input we've received from the public, and the work that the staff has done to make sure that we improve our current ordinance. One of the things I like about the change is that it does add one more opportunity, actually, for review. Whereas before, we didn't have that opportunity to present that full response to the EIO. Things just went directly to the committee. I think it gives any person who's accused an extra opportunity. But I think that it also removes an undue burden on that committee to do investigation when the committee does not necessarily have that direct expertise. So in that sense, I feel like it truly improves the current process. and puts us in a better place should we need to ever use the ethics ordinance. I will say that no ordinance is ever perfect. And so I don't have that in anticipation that this is going to be perfect as well. But I do think it is much improved. And I think that that's, in government, that's one of the things that we need to do is try to improve the processes that we have to make them the best that they can be. And hopefully this does that. Yeah. Is there any further discussion?
No?
Okay. And the motion on the table is to, let me make sure I have this right, to approve this version
With final revisions,
with final revisions.
including our revision today on
1.806.
collective bargaining. Yeah.
Okay. Which means that when this committee makes that approval, it then goes on to the city council. So there's another opportunity for review and approval at the city council level. So really, the committee is just approving this to move it forward. So just making sure that everybody in the audience knows that. So with that said, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all for your hard work on the ethics ordinance, and I will add that to the agenda for the next council session when they have time. I'm not sure what the agenda looks like for the next session, so it might not be the next meeting, it might be the one right after. We'll see what the timeline looks like. The next item on our agenda is discussion of committees and ordinances to sunset. If you'll recall, the last meeting, we started discussing committees, and one of the first steps here was to have the staff look at committees that are established in ordinance and to determine those that are not meeting, whether or not they should be meeting or whether or not they are truly a sunsetted committee. So with that said, I know a lot of work has been done by the staff to determine this, and so I'm going to turn this over to our deputy city manager, Suzanne Woodland.
So I worked through the list that Councilor Cook had prepared and reached out to various other departments. I reached out to Kim McNamara with regard to the Board of Health, and she provided, I didn't think to bring the email down, a very good detailed summary of why she felt it was unnecessary to have a Board of Health, given that we have a professional department. And that really is what it came down to. The Board of Healths are more useful when you have a town or municipal structure where you don't have a health department with professionals in it. So she was perfectly, she recommended, frankly, that we sunset that. It has not met, and from her perspective, would not serve a useful purpose given our current professional department. Second, I reached out to the chief building inspector, Shanti Wolf, on a couple of those committees that are building related, and he reviewed the state code and said that we can do without the plumbing examiners committee. I didn't bring my list down. And there was one other committee.
Building Code Board of Appeals.
I believe that's the one there's one that stays.
I think that's the one.
That's the one I think that stays.
That's set as
There
a
is-
standing committee.
Yeah, there's a third one.
The building commission,
Yep, that's the one that's not needed.
Okay.
So there are two that are not needed, and I apologize, in my race down, I didn't bring my committee list.
do you want to share a list?
You know what, let me just,
I can actually look at it on the computer.
Yep, so the Board of Plumbing Examiners is not required by the code, and we have no indication that it's been used. The Building Commission, again, no indication that it has been used recently, and he sees no statutory reason for it. There is in the state code a requirement for a Building Code Board of Appeals, and so that should stay. We haven't been using it. It doesn't happen very often, so that's why I don't even think we have any sitting members right now. I talked to Attorney Sullivan, and he said it's occasionally pulled together as needed, but as a general rule, that body would hear, basically, as you might imagine, appeals from a building code decision. And what tends to happen in the field is they work it out because they don't want to stop construction. They want to get the job done, and so the contractor and the builder work it out with the code officials in terms of what the code actually requires. So, nice.
I just shared my screen so that anyone who decides to watch this meeting at a later date can see this listing of committees, and that anyone in the room can also see it and follow along. It's just a long list of committees and how they're established, who they report to, their terms, whether or not they're blue ribbon or standing committee, and the challenges around them. So we have a list that are defunct. We've discussed so far the Board of Health, which I'm highlighting, the Board of Plumbing Examiners, which I'm highlighting, and let's see if I can find it.
The Building Commission is right.
Oh, there it is, Building Commission,
That can go.
which is there.
Defunct, yep.
There are a few others
Oh.
on this list that I had questions around.
So,
The Micro Enterprise Advisory Committee,
correct.
listed as defunct. And my understanding is it is indeed defunct.
Yes.
Um,
All right. Clearly, I forgot to bring out like a whole file where I put all this stuff.
It's okay.
It's one of those mornings.
The others that I have questions on are the Personnel Advisory Board, the Planning and Development Council. I don't think that one exists anymore.
Right,
What was the last one?
The Personnel Advisory Board.
right.
I'm just going through
Yeah.
and looking at those that are listed as being defunct. I wish I knew how to make this larger so that it's more visible. Wonder if there, aha. Okay, if I just make it more visible on my screen. So there's the Personnel Advisory Board there. And I'm going to highlight it, but in a different color maybe, so everyone can see that. The Planning and Development Council, the Portsmouth Economic Development Loan Program Board, the Portsmouth Heritage Museum Board, Portsmouth Housing Endowment Fund Board, the Renewable Energy Policy Blue Ribbon Committee, the Seacoast MPO Technical Advisory Committee, Strategic Planning Committee for Von Mall Worth Bridge Revitalization, and the Von Mall Blue Ribbon Committee. Now, some of these are showing up in ordinance, but some of them just show up on our website as existing committees, and it's not clear that they're not meeting anymore. So as you'll notice, the ones that show up in the ordinance are the Personnel Advisory Board, the Planning and Development Council, Portsmouth Heritage Museum Board, Portsmouth Housing Endowment Fund Board. The others are all just on our website as listings of committees that I don't believe meet.
Yep, and we believe we can consolidate the Portsmouth Housing Endowment Fund is the same really as the Portsmouth Housing Endowment Fund Advisory Board. We need to collapse those. It is one board, and that's active and staffed by our CDBG manager. The function of that board is to consult on the first-time homebuyer hometown program. So they have 1 to 2 meetings per year, but we have some duplication, so we'll have to collapse that on our part.
Would you mind repeating that, the name of the
Yep.
committee that meets,
Yep.
that does actually meet?
Yep. It's listed twice. The Portsmouth Housing Endowment Fund is the same as the Portsmouth Housing Endowment Fund Advisory Board.
Okay.
So we need to, from a website perspective, we need to collapse those and work on that on our end, because that is the board, again, which is part of our hometown program.
Okay.
And they meet 1 to 2 times a week. What is defunct is the Portsmouth Economic Development Loan Program Board and the Micro Enterprise Advisory Committee. These were CDBG funded programs, but the funds have all been expended, and so therefore those two can be pruned.
Okay. And the Portsmouth Heritage Museum Board.
And that one I need to track down still. Don't know the history for that one. I did not get any answers for that.
So then the others that are council established, the Renewable Energy Policy Blue Ribbon Committee, I believe that shifted after they established a policy, and now we have sustainable practices
Right.
and an energy advisory that grew out of sustainable practices, instead of having the Renewable Energy Policy Blue Ribbon Committee. Does anyone see a reason why we need to keep the Renewable Energy Policy Blue Ribbon Committee on the books?
From my perspective, it makes sense to consolidate, that work related to energy is under the sustainable practices right now. So it seems much more logical to fold that in.
I know that the mayor hasn't appointed anyone to this.
Right.
Couple of the Blue Ribbon committees, the Von Mall Blue Ribbon Committee, and then the, what is it called?
There's another
The
one.
Worth,
Yeah, the
those
Von
two
Worth Bridge
committees
revitalization.
had final reports, but I guess one of the things that's happening is that the work on both of those areas is coming up, and I'm wondering if there might be some cause to not necessarily retain those committees, but specifically, but just, I don't know, somehow think about how to maybe use that expertise when those projects come up.
So would it be helpful then for me to go back and reach out to both? I think there was a public works component to the Von Mall one at least, as well as economic
Planning.
development and planning. If I reach out to those 3 folks and just see.
It was David, actually, on the Von Worth.
Yep.
What's his last name?
David Moore?
I'm making it
Yeah,
here.
Dave Moore, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So I can follow up on that and see if, what they see coming down the pike in terms of additional need or value for a committee, probably we could merge it into one, I'm
Merge it
guessing.
into one, and, I mean, there was a lot of good resources, and I don't know, maybe just some, when that project comes up, maybe we can just use the list of resources that, of people as well as documents that were delivered there. And maybe just establish a new study or something to incorporate both of those.
Yeah, I was also trying to think, I know there was a phased kind of approach or thinking in terms of Vaughan Mall because of the work that's going to go on Fleet Street,
Right.
which is going to be a bigger project than we originally intended, and
Well,
it's got,
Vaughan Mall's a big project because all the utilities in Vaughan Mall.
exactly, and they tie into that Fleet Street system. Let me get an update on that and report back on what the timing looks like for that. Would that help?
I think it would. I think it would also, like, I don't know if we need another committee component. If the work has been done by the committees and now it's just, it has to be implemented, at this stage, we might not need
Yeah, I
a
think,
committee, but it would be good to know what that status is, if they
Yep.
need the advice of a committee or at the stage
Right.
we're completed.
Did that ever get to the point of a master plan for Vaughan Mall? Or was it just a consultant study and,
I think the intent was for both of those committees to influence the master plan, but I don't know whether that happened.
Right.
because, Prescott Park resulted in a master plan that was approved by the council. I don't think.
No, this never,
This never
neither
went.
of these reached that point.
No. No. But like I said, there was a big relationship between what was happening on the Fleet Street project, and we got a lot of public input on the Fleet Street project, and now there's a conceptual plan or headed to engineering to kind of work downstream and then bring it up into Fleet Street after the 400th. So let me, if it's okay with you, I will round up the team and I can report back, and maybe I can even flag if I can grab that final report, and that might help inform where things stood.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember it going to the city council at all
No,
either. It
I
was,
know neither of those went to the city council.
yeah.
My wife was on one and I was on the other.
Okay, so I will follow up on that. And I'll also follow up on the Personnel Advisory Board, because I am not aware that that is used at all.
Okay.
And Planning and Development Council. Okay.
And
Smith Heritage Museum Board.
that's the one I have a question about. The Portsmouth Heritage Museum Board,
I have no
I
idea.
believe, does not exist anymore.
Yeah, I was trying to think, I'm not even sure who I would ask, other than
Yeah,
a large group, and say, if you know.
Right. At least not as a city entity.
Right.
I think it became an organization in the city. I don't think that I think that this is kind of, it was in order to make sure that we steward the historical artifacts of the city, which I think are now held by Portsmouth Historical Society and Discovery Center.
there is, I know that part of the CIP is to deal with Portsmouth records. And I know because I'm very familiar with people on the Historical Society Board and on the Athenaeum Board, that both of those organizations are thinking about the same thing. And so all those organizations are crucial to the story of Portsmouth. And I think that there might be a reason to continue having those conversations formally. So whether that's that committee or whether it's something that's created to do that, I don't know.
I do know that when we, the city, look at managing our historical records, there are ones that we're required to keep by state statute, and there are certain requirements for that. And then we often work closely with the library where if they are records that we may not be required to keep, but have that historical, storytelling, if you will, of the past. We have sometimes reached out to the library, or often reached out to the library with their archival sort of understanding of what might be relevant, to the Portsmouth story at a later date, to help us evaluate records, and to save records. And I know they have contacts within the historic community so that there's an intersection of understanding in terms of who's maintaining what for records. So I'm happy to do a little more digging on this. I can talk to the library who, like I said, we do lean on their archival services and their perspective and expertise when it comes to deciding what to do with some of our records that are not required to be kept and whether they should be, destroyed or saved because they fit in part of a picture of the past that would be important to maintain. So I can try and report back a little more on that if that's helpful.
I think it is. I just pulled up the ordinance to look at the ordinance specifically, because I want to make sure, we don't have anything in our ordinances that don't really reflect what is being done. I think it's absolutely, it's critical that we preserve our historic records and preserve them well. I think the intent of this ordinance was truly to establish a museum. It says that the Portsmouth Heritage Museum Board is hereby created to encourage the development of a facility which would provide the location for display, acquisition, and safekeeping of various items which, in the opinion of the board, have special historical significance to the city of Portsmouth.
I think that's important.
Yes.
And as I say, the Athenaeum is out of space and is looking to create a proper facility for record storage. And I know also that the Historical Society is out of space and looking for the same thing. And so if the city's looking for the same thing, maybe there's an opportunity there that can provide everybody with a appropriate location and facility.
It's interesting, the ordinance specifically looks to the library for this. It says that the board is made up of 5 members: the mayor, the city manager, the director of the library, 2 citizens, 1 appointed by the mayor and 1 appointed by the trustees of Prescott Park, which is interesting. So it would have to be modified anyway at this stage. And it's for 2 years. And it's intriguing because they wanted to, the board basically, to recommend to the library director policies necessary for the operation of a museum, and recommend a budget to the library director, and promote acquisition through loan or gift of those articles of historical significance to the city presently in private ownership. So I think what's intriguing about this ordinance is it envisions a library that at the time, I don't think we truly had, because this was 1988.
Yeah, it didn't exist.
Yes, we didn't have the same attention to this in the nonprofit community. And we do have special records rooms in the library as well, which was envisioned in the new library facility. So I'm guessing that what happened is when we got to that stage, this was no longer considered needed at that point. And I think that we do need additional space for preservation, for storage of records. But I don't know if that's the function of the city government or if it's the function of a group of nonprofits working together with the library and then the city contributing. I don't know if the city should have control over that process or if we should hand it over to the experts in the
I don't
nonprofit
either.
world. Yeah. So,
I just view it as an opportunity to satisfy a broader need.
Well, I am happy to reach out to the library and see if the library representatives can come for the next meeting prepared to talk about records and what they're currently doing and how they have conversations or not with the other nonprofits that manage records. And we can certainly explore that further if that's what the committee would like.
yes.
I wondered if that happened around the time Dorothy Vaughan passed away, because I know she had a lot of material.
That would, now that you mention that, and that timing, that could be accurate, yes.
So there was some in the library, there's some in the Athenaeum, there was
Some in her house.
Yes, there might well have been an intersection there with that particular concern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
interesting to
the
know
other-
the background.
I think the other time period where this may have come up is when we had a lot of different historic houses and small societies that coalesced into the Portsmouth Historical Society, too, so.
That makes sense. Well, I think it would be nice to hear back from the library if they know the status at least on this or on preservation and records at the city level, and if there is any coordination
Yep.
from the city side, since we don't directly monitor what the library does. I think they would know much better than we do. And we can decide how then we want to address that ordinance in particular. Is there general consensus? I've highlighted several of these in yellow that are defunct and considered defunct. Board of Health, Board of Plumbing Examiners, Building Commission, Micro Enterprise Advisory Committee, Portsmouth Economic Development Loan Program Board, and then Renewable Energy Policy Blue Ribbon Committee, which is the only one that's up there that's not ordinance that I'm highlighting. Is there general consensus around recommending that we do away with the ordinances pertaining to those specifically in yellow that I just mentioned? The others, the ones that are highlighted in orange are ones we're still looking into, and in green are the ones that we're going to be checking on as well.
Let me just ask, I know that the Pierce Island Committee just voted to sunset, so I don't know if you
Did they
will.
actually, I missed that meeting because they didn't give me any notice. Is that what?
That's
happened?
my understanding,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Okay.
They think their work's done. That's what I got from the meeting I went to.
Okay. So I'm going to put that one then on our list, maybe for our next meeting. We'll double check and make
Yep.
sure that we've got an accurate, like that we know that that is definitely where they stand as well.
Okay.
It seems to me we should have some process to get input from the public before we snuff these out.
Okay.
Well, and I will say, keep in mind, you will have public comment at the when you move these through the ordinance structure as well.
Right.
So always
Right.
important to keep in mind.
Right, so we'd have to go through the 3-reading
Yep.
process.
If you would like, we can move also public comment up today. I'll take a motion to do that, to move public comment up on the agenda, so we can hear from the public here, if anyone wants to speak, before we get to the next item, the mid-year update on city
Yeah, I
council.
would also like to just address the microenterprise advisory committee.
Yes,
It seems like that's more likely to be a subcommittee of the Economic Development Committee. If I'm, I don't, I was just gonna look up the ordinance that created that, and, because that is an ordinance, and I don't know.
Yes.
I didn't find it quickly, so.
I'm going through myself here. Here it is. It's ordinance 1.410. Uh, So this was a micro enterprise, probably from a micro enterprise loan program.
Right, that was
Yeah.
what I got back from the economic development director, who
Okay.
reached out to Nancy Carmer and said, it arose because of monies we had and we don't have them anymore.
Okay.
But I would agree, if there's going to be another conversation about micro enterprise, more generally, it might naturally fall under Economic Development Committee
Right.
as a
I mean,
special or subcommittee.
We've heard a lot of, Portsmouth pays attention to the big businesses, but forgets about the small businesses. I'm not sure that's necessarily true, but I think that, I don't know. But,
Yeah. It's interesting. I think that right now that does fall to the Economic Development
yeah,
Commission, and they're also established by ordinance. So this particular committee seems to be completely designed to manage a loan program.
Yes.
And we have a few of those. So the loan programs just don't exist anymore, but then the ordinance was set up because we needed an ordinance to establish that standing committee. So I don't know how others feel. I personally feel like it's completely reasonable for those concerns to be addressed by the EDC.
yes, I do too.
Yeah.
Well, similar to that, we've got the Economic Development Loan Board. Which has not been active, right? Loan Program Board,
Yes.
which was, looks like established by the city manager. So it wasn't even,
Which one is that?
Is this one I don't have listed?
It's under Portsmouth Economic.
look under P
Yeah, I
on your
got it.
list, Portsmouth Economic Development Loan Program Board.
Yes. That one is also defunct at this point because there's not a economic development loan program now.
So that would be something that could land in the EDC's lap, I think. If the, and again, as you know, was it built around a loan program, and is the loan program gone?
I think that one is gone and defunct, but I
Yes.
don't think I got a response back on that one.
That was my understanding that that one's
Okay.
also defunct.
Okay.
So the loan program is gone.
Okay.
There were a lot of economic development loans in the past
Yep.
that don't exist at this point. So, and that's why we're also considering funding for our economic development position this year because of a special program that no longer
Right, so
exists.
this was the proceeds from the loan that built the Sheraton
Oh, right. Okay, yeah, yeah.
that funded economic development as a revolving fund.
And I'm looking at the, what was it called? The Planning and Development Council is also an ordinance that is defunct.
Yes, I think it's defunct. That's my own determination that I haven't seen it meeting, but I think that's one we'll check on.
We can check on it, but I agree. I have been here how long? 18 years. I have not seen that meeting.
And some of these have been replaced, with other, like
Right.
we do this a different way now.
Yeah.
Because it's really interesting. What this was designed to do, if you look at the Planning and Development Council, it was designed to have, people from each of the land use boards really talking amongst themselves. And it's interesting because we've created that now as a subcommittee of council and a land use committee between council and staff to discuss because this board no longer exists. So at some point, somebody thought it was important to have this, and then it disappeared over time. And, at this stage, we're just...
Reinvented.
Yes, we're doing it a different way now. And, and I think it's also important to remember that some of these quit working together because it wasn't a good model. It didn't work. So that's sometimes a reason why something disappears. It's not needed. It didn't work effectively. There were no really good outcomes.
Right. We're also seeing more joint work sessions between boards or the boards and councils. So I think we're seeing a lot more of that. You just bring the whole board together with the other board or the city council to review policy issues and.
I don't want to ask anyone to make any decisions today necessarily on this. I just want to start kind of creating a chart so we know these are the ones that we think are defunct. We think we can remove the ordinances. These are the committees that we think are that we still need to check on. And these are the ones that we think maybe we can modify or alter to better suit our needs. We're getting kind of late. I want to make sure in the next meeting of governance, I would suggest that we get the report back from the staff on Pierce Island Personal Advisory Board, Planning and Development Council, Portsmouth Housing Endowment Fund Board, and the Seacoast MPO Technical Advisory Committee. And I will make sure that they all have a copy of this with those highlighted. That we also hear back from the library, hopefully, on the Portsmouth Heritage Museum Board status, and get a report back on the Strategic Planning Committee for Vaughan Worth Bridge Revitalization and Vaughan Mall Blue Ribbon Committee, and whether or not we need further advice or if those are committees that can be consolidated. And I made that note. And then I think that the other task that we should work on for the next committee meeting is looking at rotations on these, like board appointments and rotations. You'll note that in this, I also highlighted anything I bolded with a rotation question mark behind it if a committee wasn't following its assigned rotation as written in the ordinance. So, for example, let's look at Economic Development Commission. They're appointed for 4 years. It's a standing committee, but the rotation is off. So we have a few members who, like, we have a few too many that are sunsetting off or rotating off at the wrong time. So, whenever you see that mark rotation question mark, it is because the rotation on that committee doesn't follow the way that it's written in the ordinance. And so we'll need to go committee or board, commission by committee, essentially, and look at those and see if there's a way to adjust the rotation so that it fits in with our current ordinance or with the RSAs in some cases. And we'll have to work with legal counsel on that as well when it's RSA established. So I think, though, that that's a conversation we can start having and create a second chart around when those committees when those rotations occur, if that works for everyone else in the committee.
Yeah, I think
Can
that's.
I ask you a favor, too?
Yes.
Can you send this as, not as a PDF, but as a spreadsheet?
Yes.
Because it would be helpful to be able to sort it and,
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm working from this document in Excel, Microsoft Excel. So
Yeah.
I can send it in that format if that helps
Yeah.
the committee members.
That'd be
Yeah.
great, so that we could group together rotation issues, group together defunct committees.
Okay. I can do that. And you'll notice the highlights, I just put it in my document. So
so they'll be highlighted.
they'll be highlighted when you receive it. Is there anything else we want to discuss on committees' ordinances today, or do we want to move on to next item? When ready? Okay. The next item on our agenda is the mid-year update to City Council.
Take comment first.
If there's a motion to suspend the rules and bring comment forward, we can.
Yeah.
Are you interested in commenting on
Go
this?
ahead. I'm going to, yes, but I don't want to interrupt
Okay.
the process here.
So, mid-year update to the City Council. We should probably be reporting back to the council on current status.
About mid-year.
It's about mid-year, so that's why I thought I would raise this. We have a few more committee meetings before that would be due. How do we want to report back is my question. You know, different committees do this differently. Some write up a formal report. Others just prepare essentially a slideshow, and others just do an oral report. Since this is a fairly new committee, what is the preference of the committee?
I'd recommend just a slide deck, 4 or 5
Yeah.
slides.
Okay.
I mean, the council's going to get a lot of paperwork for the ethics, for those approvals, especially the ethics. And
And we've also got the minutes of the meetings.
Okay.
so, yeah, I think a slide deck is probably a good thing to do.
Okay. Okay. That seems reasonable to me as well. I'm happy to develop something and then get input in committee.
If you can create slide decks,
Happy to do that and then share it with the committee for input. And we could also attach the minutes so that the council has a copy of the minutes from our meetings.
maybe get Bob to do a video.
I would think that the amount of work that legal counsel has had to do for this committee would warrant a video from our city attorney this way. We'll see if he's interested. How's that?
Maybe.
Wearing my lawyer hat.
We have another year to torment our deputy city attorney, unfortunately. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and move on to public comment
Okay.
and open it up. Is there anyone who wants to share public comment? And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Okay, please.
Good morning, Peter Huda, 280 South Street. There's a couple things I'd like to talk to you about this morning. The first thing, even though you have already approved the minutes, I would like to bring your attention to the minutes of May 16th. And I have not seen this before, and this is why I'm calling your attention to this. Halfway down the page, instead of noting what was said in the public comment, we have the following residents provided public comment on the draft ethics ordinance, and we have the names. There was no further comment on that. And then down farther on number 5, we have public comment was received on topic of committees from Esther and myself. I have not seen this before. This is basically filtering and suppressing information on public comment. So I humbly request that this be changed at the next meeting, and maybe this be corrected as it is on film. It would be really, I don't know the process since this has already been approved by the committee, but it would be probably to your advantage to adjust this. The other comment I do have on that, and my comments are on the Code of Ethics, and I would like these comments to be included in the minutes. I guess, I don't know if I have to say it, but I'd like to go on record, and it's great to hear that you are still going to be open as this goes to the City Council for comments. My comments are on number H. I see you still have the city manager in there. I don't know if it's going to be clear to everybody else, but it's not really clear to me if this is only related to issues that are going to affect employees. And let's see, I'll just go down the numbers here. On 1802, in conflicts of interest, officers and employees, however, may appear without compensation in behalf of constituents. I would ask you there to look at the perception that is being given here when an officer or an employee would represent a constituent or anybody else. The perception could be that they have, quote, inside help. So I would ask you to look at the wording on that. 1802G, there is still nothing here listed on breaking one's oath of office by any officers or board members, committee members, anything like that, and disclosing confidential information that should have been kept confidential. On 18, I don't want to go too fast.
Okay.
Sorry, I know you're writing. On 1805, I still would suggest that the city manager be assigned to recommend a EIO to the council, and the council select. There could be 2 or 3 possible candidates here. The other thing I would ask on the last sentence here, the EIO shall have sufficient experience and training. I think this is very vague. Since this position was specifically created for ethics and basically law, I think personally I would like to see it more described in there of what this should be, as if this EIO is going to be recommended to the city council, they should have some method of judging the sufficiency of their knowledge to do this. Let's see. The other part is on 1805B, the bottom, and I'm hoping I have the right copy here. In the event the complaint is against the city manager, the responsibility to identify and retain shall go to the city attorney. to recommend. This is kind of a conflict because the city attorney works for the city manager. So on that, I would ask that you put in the assistant mayor or somebody who isn't in a direct line of association with a conflict there. Let's see. Okay, 18062. The city attorney and the mayor shall conduct the review for sufficiency. That is a little vague. So on that, I guess I would ask, to make it easier for everybody, if when a complaint is put forward, they could specify the above code section that they think was violated. I think that would help in efficiency, basically. And the other part of that is the code section should be notified, and I guess in that beginning process, before we even get this EIO in there, because at this point, it's not really clear to me if that's going to be a paid position or how that's going to work. I know it was discussed in one of your earlier meetings, but I don't think we discussed the funding or anything else in this forum. So it would be great to save the taxpayers money if we didn't have to even go that far. And I do believe, I think that's it. The only other thing, I didn't have the new copy that was handed out, so I would only ask you to review and make sure your new section E is not duplicated in any other section here. I don't know if it was previously or not. The last thing I guess I would ask is on criminal sanctions, which is in 1805 at the end. I think we probably need to make it clear the authority that is being listed here, so we don't trigger any lawsuits. Because when you mention criminal, it gets a little scary, I think. And I think that's it. My only other questions would be, it would be great for the public to have all the documentation, especially on the committees, because I couldn't see that far. And I'd like to make a comment on your rotations. I guess the only comment I would make is you might have gotten off because of resignations and things that were unforeseen to a lot of people. And I don't know how you're gonna, how you'd anticipate that or deal with that. So I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment. Is there any other business?
We did talk early on about council appointments between Election Day and the New Year. And that was raised in the newspaper in an opinion column by the former assistant mayor. I don't know if that's still on our agenda or not.
It's not on the next agenda of the committee, but it will come up
Yeah.
as we start, I think, talking about rotations and appointments.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's going to take probably a while to get through all of these
Yes.
committee discussions.
Right.
But
I know we talked about it early on, and I think that was part of our discussion at the council level, too, if I'm not mistaken.
and that's something that we should definitely look at. So I'm making sure I made a note, so I keep it in the forefront. Is there anything else? Yes.
I can just clarify for the record that with regard to minutes, statutorily, all that we're required to do is keep a record of the actions taken. Historically, as staff has had time, and as the committee preferences may be expressed. We, put more or less detail into the minutes, but we believe that the recording is frankly the best place to go for the level of detail that people are often seeking. And so because of the number of meetings that we've been having throughout the city, which is good because it shows a lot of involvement and engagement, we've been sort of across the board trying to be judicious in how we spend our time, because it does take a lot of staff time. And we also recognize that the best record is probably the recorded one, so that no one feels like their comments were misconstrued or misstated in the minutes, and let the recording speak for itself. So obviously I'll defer to the request of the committee in terms of how much detail, but there has been a recognition that we've just needed to try and make some decisions on a level of detail that captures enough of the action here, and find that balance point. And so that's really what it comes down to.
Thank you. Any other business?
Not from me.
Not for me.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nope. Okay, we are adjourned.